Over a quiet holiday weekend, while London's bustling jewellery district was fast asleep, a group of thieves pulled off one of the most audacious heists in British history. Now, these weren't the slick, high-tech criminals you see in the movies. They were pensioners, a crew of old-school villains with a combined age of 448, who used brute force and decades of criminal cunning to loot an estimated £14 million in jewels, gold, and cash from a vault everyone thought was impenetrable. This is the story of how they planned and executed the largest burglary in English history, the simple, almost comical mistakes that brought their perfect crime crashing down, and the lingering mystery of the millions that were never found. You'd think a heist this big started in some sleek, modern headquarters. Not this one. This plan was cooked up over cups of tea and pints of beer in the pubs and cafes of North London. The crew was a who's who of Britain's criminal underworld, a real dad's army of villains who'd been in and out of the system for most of their lives. The undisputed leader, the man they called the Governor, was 76-year-old Brian Reader. In criminal circles, he was a living legend. His rap sheet was a mile long, including a known association with the infamous Brinksmat gold bullion robbery of 1983. Reader was meticulous, quiet, and he commanded respect. He was the mastermind, the guy who brought the crew together for one last massive score, a final hurrah to set them up for a luxurious retirement. His inner circle was just as seasoned. You had Terry Perkins, 67, a career criminal and a diabetic with a fiery temper and an unyielding drive. Then there was John Kenny Collins, the 74-year-old lookout, famous for his encyclopedic knowledge of London streets and his very noticeable white Mercedes. Daniel Jones, at 60, was the youngest of the core group, an eccentric, physically imposing figure obsessed with army and police procedure. A man who, a court would later hear, sometimes slept in his mother's dressing gown and a fez. These guys weren't just colleagues, they were old friends who had shared decades of illicit history. They were analog criminals in a digital world. Their methods were old school, face-to-face meetings, cash-only deals, and a deep-seated distrust of modern tech. Their target was as iconic as they were, the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Limited. For centuries, Hatton Garden has been the heart of London's diamond trade, a street where fortunes are made and kept. The safe deposit facility was considered a fortress. We're talking about an underground vault protected by 2 shutter systems, multiple alarms, and a formidable, 50-centimeter thick reinforced concrete wall. For the jewellers of Hatton Garden, it was the safest place on earth. For the gang, it was the ultimate challenge, a treasure chest just waiting to be cracked. The planning took years. They studied the building's layout, researched its security, and got their hands on their most important tool, a heavy-duty Hilti DD350 industrial power drill. This was a 3-foot-long, 75-pound beast designed to chew through concrete and steel. The final piece of their puzzle was a mysterious figure known only as Basil. He was their inside man, the electronics expert who supposedly knew how to bypass the sophisticated alarm systems. With Basil on board, the team was ready. They chose their moment perfectly, the Easter bank holiday weekend of April 2015, a 4-day window when Hatton Garden would be a ghost town. The stage was set. On the evening of Thursday, April 2, 2015, as London emptied out, the gang made their move. Dressed as gas utility workers in high-visibility jackets, they got into the building through a fire escape on the side, audacious, but simple. Once inside, they disabled the elevator and rappelled down the empty lift shaft into the basement. They were now standing right in front of the final obstacle, the vault. The air was thick with tension. This was it. John Kenny Collins stood lookout upstairs, while another associate, Carl Wood, served as muscle. Down below, Reader, Perkins, and Jones got to work. First up was bypassing the alarm system. This was Basil's job. He was the ghost in the machine, the one who allegedly used a set of keys to let himself in before disabling the alarms. With the building silent, the heavy work began. They aimed the Hilti DD350 at the concrete wall and flipped the switch. The sound was a monstrous roar, but they were deep underground, and the city above was asleep. For hours, they drilled, boring 3 large, overlapping holes to create an opening just big enough to squeeze through. It was grueling work, especially for men in their 60s and 70s. But on the other side of the wall, they hit a snag. A massive, heavy metal cabinet full of safe deposit boxes was blocking their new entrance. They had a tool for that, too, a 10-ton hydraulic ram. They set it up, started pumping, and then, disaster. The ram broke. The cabinet wouldn't budge. After all that back-breaking work, they were stopped by faulty equipment. Frustration boiled over. Arguments broke out. It looked like the heist was a failure. Brian Reeder, the seasoned governor, had seen enough. The risks were getting too high. He pulled out, convinced the job was a bust. But Terry Perkins and Danny Jones weren't giving up. Not when they were this close. They retreated for the night, leaving their tools and a gaping hole in the vault wall, vowing to come back and finish what they started. They spent the next day getting new gear. On Saturday night, April 4th, they returned. This time, Reeder wasn't with them. It was just Perkins, Jones, Collins, and the mysterious Basil. Armed with a new pump for the ram, they attacked the cabinet again. This time, with a groan and a scrape, it moved, revealing the prize, rows upon rows of steel safe deposit boxes. Basil and Danny Jones, the slimmest of the crew, squeezed through the jagged, 20-inch wide hole. They were in. 4 hours, they worked with crowbars, angle grinders, and sledgehammers, prying open 73 boxes. They filled large wheelie bins with their haul, glittering diamonds, precious stones, luxury watches, bundles of foreign currency, and solid gold bars. By the early hours of Easter Sunday, they were done. Exhausted and filthy, but triumphant, they hauled their loot out of the building, loaded it into a van, and just drove away into the quiet London dawn. They had spent 2 nights inside the building and walked away with an estimated £14 million. They believed they'd just committed the perfect crime. When the staff of Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Limited came back to work on Tuesday, April 7th, they walked into a scene of utter devastation. The basement was a mess of tools and debris. The vault, their fortress, had a giant, gaping hole in its wall. Inside, dozens of safe deposit boxes were broken and empty. The news spread like wildfire, stunning the public and deeply embarrassing the police. How on earth could this have happened? The story quickly got worse. It turned out an alarm had been triggered on the first night of the raid. A call was logged by the security company and passed to the Metropolitan Police. But, in a catastrophic failure, the call was graded as not needing a police response. No officers were ever sent to the scene. The gang had been left to work in peace. Facing a storm of criticism, the Met Police assigned their elite flying squad to the case. The investigation, codenamed Operation Wheating, kicked off with a meticulous review of thousands of hours of CCTV footage. The gang had been careful, using disguises and sticking to the shadows. But they weren't ghosts. The first crucial mistake came from John Kenny Collins. The 74-year-old lookout, despite all his experience, had driven his own distinctive white Mercedes to the heist. The car's license plate was plain as day on camera. That one amateurish error gave police their first real lead. They tracked the car, built a profile of its owner, and discovered he was a known career criminal. Suddenly, the dad's army of thieves didn't seem so clever. Investigators started connecting the dots, linking Collins to his old associates, Perkins, Jones, and the infamous Brian Reeder. They were all elderly men with long criminal histories. The police launched a massive surveillance operation, bugging the gang's cars and favorite meeting spots, including the Castle Pub in Islington. What the police heard on those bugs was a goldmine. The gang just couldn't resist bragging. They were recorded arguing over how to split the loot, boasting about the heist, and revealing critical details of how they did it. Their biggest enemy wasn't the police, it was their own egos. Police even brought in lip readers to decipher conversations caught on silent pub CCTV. They traced cell phone data, mapping the gang's every move. Then, in a bizarre twist, Danny Jones took police on a treasure hunt of his own, leading them to a cemetery where he'd buried 2 bags of jewels under a memorial stone. He claimed it was his whole share, but police were skeptical. The flying squad had everything they needed. On May 19th, just over a month after the heist, they carried out raids on 12 addresses across London and Kent. They arrested the core members of the gang, stunning them in their own homes. They recovered about a third of the stolen goods, some of it hidden in kitchen cupboards and under floorboards. The men who planned the perfect crime were brought down by the simplest mistakes, using their own cars and not being able to keep their mouths shut. The trial of the Hatton Garden thieves was a media circus. The image of these elderly, frail men in the dock, accused of such a bold crime, captured the public's imagination. In March 2016, the sentences came down. John Collins, Terry Perkins, and Daniel Jones each got 7 years. Brian Reeder, the mastermind who'd backed out, got 6 years and 3 months. But the story didn't end there. Terry Perkins died in prison in 2018. Brian Reeder was released early that same year due to failing health and passed away in 2023, taking any secrets about the missing loot to his grave. The other members have since been released, but they face massive confiscation orders, demanding they pay back millions or face more jail time. And then there was Basil. For 3 years, the identity of the alarm expert who made it all possible was a complete mystery. He was a ghost. But the flying squad didn't give up. Using CCTV analysis of his distinctive walk and DNA evidence, they finally got their man. Michael Seed, a 58-year-old electronics expert living a quiet life just a couple of miles from the crime scene. When police raided his flat, they found over £140,000 worth of stolen gold and gems. In 2019, he was sentenced to 10 years, the last of the gang to be caught. His sentence was later extended for failing to pay back his share of the stolen fortune. The Hatton Garden heist has become a modern legend, a story that blurs the line between a shocking crime and a Hollywood caper. It's inspired movies and TV shows, turning these aging criminals into unlikely folk heroes. But behind the Diamond Weavers narrative are the real victims, the dozens of jewelers who lost not just their wealth, but irreplaceable heirlooms and their livelihoods. And the biggest question of all still hangs in the air. Where is the rest of the money? Of the estimated £14 million stolen, nearly £10 million is still missing. Vanished without a trace. Did the gang hide it? Was it smuggled abroad? Or is it, as one source suggested, a cursed treasure that can never be spent? The Hatton Garden job is one of the most fascinating true crime stories of our time. For more incredible stories of daring heists and detailed criminal investigations, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. The Hatton Garden heist was a crime of contradictions. It was meticulously planned, yet undone by foolish mistakes. It was carried out by men at the very end of their criminal careers, a final throwback to an analog age of villainy. It was a story of incredible audacity and, in the end, spectacular failure. And while the bad grandpas are no longer a threat, the legend of their last big job lives on, forever tied to the mystery of the missing millions, the final, secret chapter in the heist that shocked the world.